the sexual ethics policy for the Texas Annual Conference Administration for the United Methodist denomination in Houston, Texas. Excuse me, my nose is itching. Okay. This one is and it is page 13, suggestions for office decor. The following are suggestions that will help create an appropriate for pastoral relationships that is private but allows for appropriate monitoring and supervision, which personally I think is ridiculous because they don't really do that. I would never meet with anyone in a church alone again. Comfortable chairs positioned at a 45-degree angle from each other create a good area for conversation. Couches and love seats are discouraged. They have those. Even if they're discouraged, they have them. If they are used, persons who have pastoral relationships should sit in a chair separate from visitors or parishioners. Windows in walls or doors should be unobstructed by blinds, furniture, curtains, or posters so that the space is always subject to casual monitoring. So, when Kendall Graham had sexual intercourse with a minor on his couch in the office and he videotaped it, was there casual monitoring for that? I mean, I'm just wondering. A sense of privacy can be maintained by arranging the furniture so that persons who provide pastoral care are always visible, but the parishioner or visitor does not feel exposed. So I was in church careers, and we had someone met with us, two people, one clergy I had known since I was a kid. And one of the clergy that spoke with our class, our church careers class at Lon Morris College, he said that the appropriate form of touch, let's say if you are visiting someone in a hospital, is you can put your hand on their foot or your hand on their shoulder, or you can hold their hand. My personal opinion is I just prefer not to touch anybody. And the only person I want to hug is my husband, and that is it. I have never been a touchy, feely, lovey-dovey kind of person. And my kids are the same way. I don't like people who feel that, they have certain privileges where they can put their hands on other people's children, because I think that is wrong. I don't touch other people's children. Now, for example, I was walking in the parking lot of our apartment, and our downstairs neighbors had a child who was basically a toddler between the age of 2 and 3, and they fell and they were crying. So I walked over because I'm not going to walk past a crying toddler who's fallen. And I picked him up and I handed him to his mother. However, I have very good boundaries with children. In fact, I have worked in childcare, and I've also been accused in childcare of not interacting enough. But the reason is because I like to give children their own space. I don't want to crowd them, and I want to let them be. I am very conscious of that. I always have been. I did not want other people touching my children. And this is something that I am very aware of. And let me make something very clear. Usually, people who don't want to be around kids are not child abusers. Usually, this is going to offend some people. Usually, child abusers want to be around kids. I don't want to be around kids. I don't want to be around your kids. I've paid my dues. I have worked in childcare. I could still work in childcare if I wanted to, but I lost my passion for it. I have worked with special needs kids. I've worked with autistic kids. There is a district superintendent who is on the cabinet of the Texas Conference currently, and I cared for his special needs son during a church meeting. I'm sure he forgot about that, and I did a very good job, and he was nonverbal. And I've always had a heart for special needs children. And I am a compassionate person, but I like to express my compassion from a distance. And usually, people who are child abusers want to be around kids. They have a need to be around kids, and they don't have boundaries, and they don't have a problem with doing things like pursuing a friendship with a child. When an adult pursues a friendship with a child, this is because of some type of unresolved issue, some type of void that they are trying to fill within their self, and they are using that child to do it. And it does not have to be sexual. Adults should pursue friendships with adults, never with a minor. Some of the things I also wanted to talk about, and I'm going to step outside of my comfort zone a bit because it is important that people know some of the things that my father was capable of and that he did, and I have shared some of that. When I was 17, and my parents and I went and stayed at my uncle's house in Austin. My mother had a brother that lived in Austin. And he was divorced, a divorced bachelor, lived by himself. His daughter was grown and in college. And we stayed in his home for a weekend. I don't remember why we were in Austin. And he was not there. And he had videotapes. These videotapes were soft porn. And my father watched those. He watched every single one of those soft pornography videotapes that my mother's brother owned in that entire weekend. And this was when my father was employed under the Texas Annual Conference. And he was on assignment at the First United Methodist Church in Spurger, Texas. I sat there and I feel dumb. I mean, there was no place to go. We didn't go anywhere. We stayed at my uncle's home, my mother and my father and I. And my father liked to watch movies with graphic sexuality, explicit sexuality. And so he took advantage of the fact that there were soft porn tapes in the home, and he watched those the entire weekend. There was nowhere for me to go. I don't know what, I mean, it's highly inappropriate for a United Methodist minister to sit there and watch soft porn in front of his family and his daughter, who is a minor. But, these are the type of people that the Texas Annual Conference administration of the United Methodist denomination chooses to employ. Why? I don't know. You might want to ask them. I mean, they have a website. And the reason why, I'm sure the reason why my father did that was because he wanted me to be comfortable with anything sexual around him. This was a part of his grooming process, and my mother was in on it. I didn't care for it. And it was sick. It was absolutely disgusting and immoral and unethical. And another thing he would do, well, my mother was a part of this agreement. And when he would go, starting from, I would say junior high is when it started, my mother would have me go with him to visit church members. I didn't really care for it. And it was basically because my mother just really didn't want to have the role of being a wife, and she wanted to try to put that responsibility on me. And it wasn't my job. I really did not want to go with my father to visit church members. I hated it. And sometimes there were church members that absolutely loved me. Why? I have no idea. And they would have lots of snacks. And my father liked that. He loved candy. He was very indulgent. He liked to eat junk food. And they would provide junk food, mainly because I was there. So he would use me so that he could get access to junk food, because he couldn't afford to go and buy it. So he used me and brought me with him to visit church members so he could get what he wanted from them. This is very sick. It really is. But the Texas Conference doesn't care if that goes on in the homes of their clergy. And if any type of there were times when my father would, out of the blue, would be provoked to say something sexual or have a sexual conversation. And I would clearly get uncomfortable, and I did not like it. I didn't want to be a part of the conversation. And the more uncomfortable that I was, the more he tried to encourage me to be more comfortable with him talking about something of a sexual nature. And that is sick. It is very disturbing. My parents were monsters behind closed doors. And unfortunately, it took me far too long to figure that out, and I should have cut off contact long before I did. And I didn't out of fear. And in talking with my husband now, we've both realized we missed out on a lot in life because of abusive environments that we both grew up in. And had we not grown up in those environments, our lives might have turned out very different than they are today. And I'm used to people accusing me of being crazy or mentally ill. And I have become calloused to that. In the past, I really didn't have the tools to cope or defend myself, but I have become calloused to that because usually I know that they are out of line and they are in no position to be making assumptions about my mental health. And I know one thing is for certain, that no one has called me is a coward. But people in an administration that know of victims of sexual assault by their clergy and they do nothing about it, they are nothing more than cowards. A coward runs out of fear, away from adversity, away from facing their mistakes. Because I have made mistakes. I am no angel. But I am not a coward. And that is what my sons will see. They will see that their mother was not a coward. I am not afraid to face the abuse head on. I have far more courage than one of the larger multi-billion-dollar United Methodist administrations could ever muster in their entire cabinet. And I actually just remembered that I did take care of one of the cabinet members' sons who was nonverbal. And I think he had cerebral palsy. And I took care of him. And I showed compassion. I showed more compassion to his son who was nonverbal than the Texas Annual Conference ever showed to me. And I showed more compassion than they are capable of showing to the victims of the abusers within their administration. Abuse is a very hard thing to go through, and the healing process is brutal. And I will be dealing with it for the rest of my life. I don't think forgiveness is important. And I understand that that's going to be an unpopular opinion. But since I have been on this journey alone before I met my husband, I decided that I was going to deal with it and heal in the way that I felt was best for myself. I have been through counseling, and a year ago, just before I met my husband, I actually worked with a coach who lives in Tennessee. I met him on Facebook. I'm friends with him on Facebook. And I won't say his name because he has a retainer fee of $5,000. But he met with me online and coached me because he struggled with complex PTSD himself. And he had been in combat, fought in combat multiple times. But what caused his complex PTSD is because he witnessed his sibling's murder by their parent. And he was never able to he tried to file charges and get her held accountable legally, but he was unsuccessful. And I also did the same when my mother was alive. And I came close to getting charges filed against her until they discovered that there was a statute of limitations. And I met with him online, and it was life-changing. And the reason why he was willing to meet with me for free of charge was because of all of the information I had provided for him, that I had provided and made public. Because years ago, I decided I was going to face this, and I wasn't going to face it under an alias. I was going to put my name so that everybody could see that I was not going to run and hide from it. And what people told me in the United Methodist denomination before I really began to dig deep into my trauma, before I obtained the recorded conversation of my mother admitting to drugging me so that my father could sexually assault me, was as soon as I began to deal with that and face it, all of a sudden the same people that felt that I should deal with it bailed. And I guarantee you, I had to have more courage than they did to face it. And that speaks volumes about my character, because I would rather die than put another child through what my parents put me through. I would rather die than inflict the amount of pain on another child that I have been through. And the Texas Annual Conference has a responsibility to the victims who have survived abuse by the hands of their clergy. And the fact that I can talk about this online and make eye contact speaks volumes about my character and my stamina and my mental health. Thank you. And that is all I have.